My name is Diana. I'm 3, and I run operations for a restaurant group that serves more than 3,000 guests every week across 4 locations. I know how money moves through a dining room better than most people know their own family history. That's why what happened that night should have been obvious. But when your parents call after 3 years of complete silence and say they want to make amends, you want to believe them. I did. And that mistake cost them everything. I should have asked one simple question before agreeing to dinner. Who's really sitting at the table? I didn't. I drove 40 minutes to the Belvedere, parked my car, fixed my jacket, and walked inside expecting an awkward conversation and maybe a chance to heal old wounds. Instead, I walked into a trap. 16 members of my family were already seated around a massive private dining table. Lobster tails, prime rib, imported wine, seafood towers, champagne bottles chilling in silver buckets. The kind of dinner that screams celebration, not reconciliation. The moment I entered, every head turned toward me. Then everyone started smiling. My mother stood first. There she is! The same woman who hadn't returned a single call, text, or birthday message in 3 years suddenly acted like I was the guest of honor. She wrapped her arms around me before I could react. We missed you so much. The lie landed softly against my ear. I smiled politely. My father shook my hand. My aunts waved. My cousins cheered. Someone even clapped. It felt rehearsed, like everyone had practiced their lines before I arrived. A server appeared almost immediately. Would you like champagne, ma'am? Before I could answer, my uncle raised his glass. To family finally coming back together. The entire table erupted in applause. Something wasn't right. I felt it immediately, but I ignored it. Because a small part of me still wanted parents, no matter how old I got. Dinner continued. Everyone suddenly wanted to hear about my life, my career, my apartment, my travels, my income. Especially my income. That was strange. For years, they had treated my success like a personal insult. Now, they couldn't stop asking questions. My cousin Rachel leaned forward. So, how many restaurants do you manage now? 4. Her eyebrows shot upward. That must pay really well. I laughed. Enough. The table exchanged quick glances, tiny looks, barely noticeable. But I noticed. Years in restaurant management teach you to read rooms. And this room was talking without words. Then my brother Jason arrived. Late, as always. He dropped into the empty chair directly across from me. Everyone immediately relaxed, as if the most important guest had finally arrived. Jason flashed his familiar grin. The same grin that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. Sorry I'm late. My mother instantly touched his shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. Sweetheart. 36 years old. 2 failed businesses. 3 evictions. Thousands in debt. Still sweetheart. Meanwhile, I had been expected to pay rent at 18. The favoritism had never changed. Not once. The server returned carrying another bottle of wine. Then another. Then another. The orders kept coming. More appetizers, more seafood, more desserts. Every time a menu appeared, somebody ordered the most expensive thing available. At one point, I calculated the total mentally. Over $3,000, maybe more, and nobody seemed concerned. That's when my stomach tightened, because suddenly the invitation made sense. Not the apology, the dinner, the spending, the forced affection, the questions about my salary. I looked around the table and realized something terrifying. Not one person had apologized. Not really. They talked about moving forward, forgiveness, family, fresh starts. Everything except accountability. Everything except why they had cut me off 3 years earlier. 3 years ago, my parents had demanded that I loan Jason $70,000 to save his failing business. I refused. Not because I couldn't afford it, because I knew exactly what would happen. He'd lose the money. Again. And somehow I'd become the villain anyway. I was right. His business collapsed 6 months later. My parents blamed me. My relatives blamed me. And overnight, I became the selfish daughter who wouldn't help family. Then came 3 years of silence. Until tonight. Until this dinner. Until this performance. Halfway through dessert, my Aunt Linda stood and tapped her glass. I just want to say how wonderful it is seeing everyone together again. Everyone nodded, smiles everywhere. Then she looked directly at me. And how proud we all are of Diana's success. The compliments started flowing, one after another, almost too fast, too perfect, too coordinated. I felt like I was being softened up for something. Then Jason stood, holding a champagne glass, and suddenly the room went quiet. Completely quiet. The kind of silence people create when they've been waiting for a specific moment all night. Jason cleared his throat, smiled, and said, "Actually, there's something I'd like to ask Diana." The entire table turned toward me, every single face, waiting, watching, smiling. And at that exact moment, I finally understood why I'd been invited. Jason lifted his champagne glass and smiled like he was about to announce an engagement. The entire table watched me. Not casually, expectantly. Like they already knew how this conversation would end. My stomach dropped. "Actually," Jason said, clearing his throat, "there's something I'd like to ask Diana." A few relatives exchanged excited looks. My mother clasped her hands together. My father leaned back with a satisfied grin. And suddenly I knew. This wasn't a family reunion. This was an ambush. Jason took a dramatic breath. "As most of you know, I've been working on a new business opportunity." I nearly laughed. Working on. That was Jason's favorite phrase. He was always working on something, never running it, never growing it, never paying back the money he borrowed for it, just working on it. "My investors are excited," he continued. "My partners are excited." Partners? Investors? The last business had collapsed because he couldn't pay suppliers. Now he suddenly had investors? Interesting. But I need one final piece to make everything happen. I already knew where this was going. The room became silent. Jason smiled directly at me. A family investment. There it was. The real reason for dinner. The real reason for the fake hugs. The fake smiles. The fake apology. My aunt immediately started clapping. Others joined her. I looked around the table in disbelief. They weren't surprised. They knew. Every single person knew. This entire evening had been planned. Jason pulled a folder from beside his chair and slid it across the table. Toward me. Like a contract signing ceremony. "I only need $80,000. Only. $80,000. The way he said it made it sound like he was borrowing lunch money. Several relatives nodded approvingly. My mother smiled proudly. My father raised his wineglass. That's nothing for someone as successful as Diana. The statement hit harder than he intended, because for years they had called me selfish for building my career. Now, suddenly my success belonged to them. Jason pushed the folder closer. "You'll get paid back." The same promise. Every time, every failed business, every unpaid debt, every disaster, same words, different year. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I asked a question. "What happened to the $70,000 you borrowed from Uncle Mark?" The room froze. Jason's smile weakened. "What does that have to do with this? What happened to it?" Nobody spoke. Uncle Mark suddenly became very interested in his plate. That told me everything. Gone. Every dollar. Gone. "What about the $25,000 Dad gave you?" I asked. Silence. "And the money Grandma left?" More silence. Jason's face reddened. My mother immediately jumped in. Tonight isn't about the past. Of course it wasn't, because the past made their request look ridiculous. I folded my hands calmly. No. The word landed like a bomb. 16 faces changed instantly. The smiles disappeared. The warmth vanished. The performance ended. Jason blinked. What? No. The room erupted. My aunt gasped dramatically. My cousin shook her head. My mother looked wounded, as if I had committed a crime. My father slammed his hand against the table. After everything family has done for you? I laughed. Actually laughed. Because that question was incredible. After everything family had done for me? They had ignored me for 3 years. Missed birthdays. Skipped holidays. Rejected every attempt at reconciliation. And now they wanted $80,000. The audacity was almost impressive. What exactly has family done for me? I asked. Nobody answered, because there wasn't an answer. Jason leaned forward, his friendly mask finally slipping. You can afford it. That's not the issue. Then what is? I met his eyes. Trust. The word hung in the air, heavy, uncomfortable, true. You don't trust me? He asked. No. Direct, simple, honest. The table exploded again. Everyone suddenly had an opinion. Everyone suddenly became a financial expert. Everyone suddenly became a morality coach. For 10 straight minutes, they lectured me about loyalty, sacrifice, family obligations, support. Not one person mentioned responsibility. Not one person mentioned repayment. Not one person explained why Jason deserved another chance. Then my mother made a mistake. A huge mistake. She leaned toward me and lowered her voice. We already told everyone you'd help. I stared at her. You what? She smiled nervously. We assumed you'd say yes. Assumed. I looked around the room. The relatives weren't shocked. They weren't waiting for an answer. They had already celebrated the answer, because my parents had promised them one. Without asking me, without telling me, without my permission. And suddenly another realization hit me, a much bigger one. The food, the champagne, the private room, the extravagant spending. Nobody had asked for a bill all night. Not once, because they believed someone else was paying. Someone sitting at the table. Someone they had manipulated into attending. Someone named Diana. I slowly looked toward the servers clearing dessert plates, then toward the manager's station across the dining room, then back toward my family. And for the first time all evening, I smiled. A real smile. Because unlike everyone else at that table, I knew exactly what was about to happen when the check arrived. And it was going to be unforgettable. I smiled. And that made everyone nervous. Because people expect tears when they're manipulating you. Maybe anger, maybe guilt. But a smile? A smile means you're seeing something they aren't. Jason noticed first. Why are you smiling? I leaned back comfortably in my chair. No reason. The lie bothered him. Good. For the first time all night, I wasn't reacting to their plan. I was watching it fall apart. The server appeared beside the table carrying a black leather check presenter. Right on schedule. My mother immediately looked at me. My father looked at me. Jason looked at me. Even relatives sitting at the far end of the table looked at me. Not at the check. At me. Because in their minds, the bill already belonged to me. The server placed the presenter gently beside my father. He didn't touch it. Instead, he pushed it across the table, toward me, without a word. The entitlement was breathtaking. I stared at the folder, then at him, then back at the folder. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 16 people waiting for me to perform my assigned role. I opened the presenter. $487. Before tax, before gratuity. I almost laughed. Seafood towers, premium steaks, vintage wine, champagne, private dining room fees. The family reunion package wasn't cheap. My father cleared his throat. Just put it on your card. Not could you, not would you. Just put it on your card. Like giving an instruction to a waitress. The room nodded collectively. Decision already made. Except they had forgotten one important detail. I wasn't a teenager anymore. I wasn't the daughter they could pressure into obedience. And I certainly wasn't their ATM. I closed the presenter, calmly. Then slid it back across the table, to my father. The silence was immediate. "What are you doing?" my mother asked. "Returning the bill." Jason laughed nervously. "No, seriously." "I am serious." The smile vanished from his face. My father frowned. "You invited us." I blinked. "What?" "You organized this dinner." The entire table suddenly started agreeing, voices overlapping, accusations flying, as if repeating a lie enough times could transform it into reality. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened the original text message. Then I placed it in the center of the table. The screen glowed between us. My mother's message. "We want to make peace. Dinner is our treat. Please come." Our treat. Not Diana's treat. Not Diana pays. Their treat. Several relatives stopped talking immediately. Others pretended not to read it. My mother turned pale. My father looked furious. Because facts are annoying when you've built a plan around fiction. Jason slammed his hand against the table. "Fine, forget dinner." His voice rose. "What about the investment?" "There is no investment." His jaw tightened. "You have the money. And you have debt." A few relatives gasped, again. Apparently reality was offensive tonight. Jason stood up so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "You're selfish." There it was, the family favorite word, selfish. The label they used whenever someone refused to let them take advantage. I looked directly at him. "No." The room quieted. "I'm responsible." Nobody had a response, because deep down they knew it was true. I paid my bills. I honored contracts. I managed thousands of transactions every week. Meanwhile, Jason treated financial obligations like optional suggestions. My aunt suddenly stood. "If your grandmother were alive, she'd be ashamed of you." That one almost worked. Almost. But then I remembered something. The final piece. The secret nobody else knew. Grandma hadn't left her money to Jason. She'd left it to me. Every dollar. And she'd written a letter explaining exactly why. Because she knew who Jason was. Because she knew who I was. Because she understood responsibility. And because she'd spent years watching my parents excuse his failures. I looked at my aunt. Grandma trusted me. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Nobody spoke. Nobody argued. Because they knew. They all knew. My grandmother had seen through the family fantasy long before anyone else. Then the manager walked over. A man named Carlos, one of the most respected restaurant managers in the city, and someone I'd worked with professionally for years. He smiled when he saw me. "Diana, good to see you." The expressions around the table changed instantly. Confusion, concern, panic. Carlos looked at the unpaid check, then at me, then at the family. Understanding arrived immediately. Restaurant people notice everything. "Need anything?" he asked. I smiled. "No, everything's under control." My father looked between us. "You know him?" Carlos laughed. "Know her?" He pointed toward me. "Half our management team uses her operational systems." The table went silent. Very silent. Because for the first time all evening they realized something. I wasn't just successful. I was respected. The kind of respect money can't buy. The kind Jason had spent his whole life trying to fake. Carlos nodded politely and walked away. But the damage was done. The illusion was broken. My family couldn't reduce me to a walking bank account anymore. Not after seeing who I actually was. I stood, picked up my purse, and looked around the table one final time. 16 people. 3 years of silence. One expensive trap. And now a very expensive bill. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, voices erupted. Arguments, accusations, panic. Someone asking who was paying. Someone else blaming Jason. My mother calling my name. I never turned around, because for the first time in years, their problems weren't mine anymore. The last thing I heard before the restaurant doors closed behind me was my father shouting, "Get back here right now!" I kept walking. The cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt strangely calm. Not angry, not hurt, just finished. Finished explaining. Finished defending myself. Finished trying to earn love that always came with conditions. I got into my car and drove home. Halfway there, my phone exploded with notifications. 23 missed calls. 31 text messages. Family group chats lighting up like fireworks. Most of them weren't apologies. They were demands. You embarrassed your parents. You could have afforded it. Family helps family. Call your brother immediately. I ignored every message. Then one text arrived that made me laugh. Jason. Because of you, they made us split the bill. I stared at the screen. After everything, that was his complaint. Not the lies, not the manipulation, not the ambush. The bill. I blocked his number, then my mother's, then my father's, then everyone else, one by one. Silence returned, and it was beautiful. But the story didn't end there, because people like Jason never accept consequences quietly. 3 days later, one of my regional managers walked into my office carrying her tablet. You should probably see this. My stomach tightened. Jason had posted a public fundraiser online. A long emotional story. According to him, he was a struggling entrepreneur whose wealthy sister had abandoned her family in their time of need. There were photos, family pictures, childhood memories, even a picture of me from 10 years earlier. He painted himself as a victim, and me as a heartless millionaire. Thousands of people had already viewed it. Hundreds had shared it. I should have been upset. Instead, I smiled, because Jason had made a mistake. A huge mistake. He had lied publicly. And unlike family gossip, public lies leave evidence. I contacted an attorney that afternoon. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the truth documented. Over the next few weeks, my lawyer collected everything. Text messages, emails, records of previous loans, evidence of unpaid debts, screenshots of the fundraiser, screenshots of false statements, the entire history. When Jason received the legal notice, he panicked. The fundraiser disappeared within hours. Then came the apology request, then another, then another. Diana, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know this family. They will ask you to carry burdens that belong to other people. They will call it loyalty. They will call it love. Sometimes they will even call it family. But real love never demands self-destruction. Protect your future. You earned it. I sat there for a long time staring at those words. Then I cried. Not because I missed the money, not because I missed my family, but because somebody had understood me all along. Somebody had seen everything and believed me. Today I'm 33. The restaurant group has expanded. My career is thriving. My home is peaceful. My phone is quiet. And every October, on my grandmother's birthday, I reserve a table at the Belvedere. Just for one. I order lobster. I order dessert. I leave an enormous tip. And when the check arrives, I pay it gladly. because it's the only family dinner bill that was ever truly mine.